My mom has a permanently stuck in the 80s thing. We're talking teased up feathered hair, acid wash denim jacket, and shoulder pads. So many shoulder pads. But I just got a new phone from AT&T, and check this out. I got a second phone to gift my mom. So now, she can finally ditch her old one for a phone that can actually stream all the 80s shows she loves.
Come into an AT&T store and find out how to get a smartphone on us. AT&T, more for your thing. That's our thing. See store for details.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL. Football, yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Purple Podcast, postgame edition. Matthew Coller in Los Angeles, California. And Zulgad back here in studio after the Vikings lose to the Los Angeles Rams 38-31. All right, Coller, your thoughts on a defensive performance that I have to be honest, as good as the Rams are offensively, I never saw coming.
No, I don't think I saw 38 points and a perfect night from Jared Goff and one of the best quarterbacking performances that I have ever seen live. 5 touchdowns, 465 yards. No. I didn't see that coming. I mean, I thought that the Los Angeles Rams would score some points because they have a brilliant offensive mind. They have an improving quarterback. They have a tremendous running back who they use in many different ways and 3 legitimately good wide receivers. And you saw all of them have big plays on this night with Cooper Kupp at a big touchdown, 70 yards. Brandon Cooks over the top with a big touchdown. Robert Woods burning Anthony Barr for a touchdown, and all those guys can play, and Sean McVay is every bit as genius as advertised, but I thought that the Vikings would at very least, based on what they did last year at US Bank Stadium, have some chance of slowing them down. I would have thought something like, 24 points, 27 points, where your offense is going to have to step up, but instead the offense did everything it possibly could, aside from finish the game on the final drive in which Kirk Cousins fumbled. But aside from that, I mean, the offense did everything they possibly could to stay in the game, and it just seemed like every time the Rams got the ball, it was over. They were flying down the field. So it was really a surprising result to see that, and Mike Zimmer had to kind of admit it at this point now that he is really concerned about the defense, and he even said that he's been concerned all year, which, I think that's fair when they got 29 points given up against the Packers, when the Buffalo Bills are putting up points on them, even though the field position was a factor there. And even the 49ers had their chances, but a couple of interceptions, ended those chances. But there were times in the San Francisco game where they ripped off big plays. So we're seeing a lot of things that are uncharacteristic of the Vikings. And, Judd, I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to completely clean this up in a week.
So tell me this, because you're right. Goff was fantastic. I mean, he's gone from being first year, oh my God, he's not good, to improving. And last year he had a very good year, and now he's fantastic. So if we are to take a step back and sort of just calm ourselves, assess this game for me. How much fault do you put, Coller, on the Viking defense, and how much was it just Jared Goff being that damn good?
I mean, there were some throws that were outrageous. The one to the back of the end zone where he drops it in over Trey Waynes. I mean, I thought Trey Waynes had very good coverage on that play, and he put it exactly where it needed to go. I mean, even the Todd Gurley one, I know that people were really upset with Anthony Barr, and that's fair, but it had to be a dime for him to get it in there. So, I mean, he looked like freaking Joe Montana tonight with his accuracy that it seemed like every throw he was on. And so I think that, what they have now, I mean, to reference those 49ers teams is they've got the complete package of brilliant offensive mind and a number 1 overall pick quarterback who's really coming into his own, who's got great footwork and great timing. And then today where you saw a little bit different from last year where there would be times if you threw him off a little that he would have to wing the ball away or something, or, maybe made a throw into coverage that he shouldn't. And tonight you did not see that. I mean, you saw, for the most part, if there was even some pressure on him, which was not often, but they found great ways to get him in bootlegs and things like that in space and set his feet and make good throws. And I think it was a combination of all those things. It was a combination of his tremendous execution of the offense, It was a combination of Sean McVay dialing up the perfect plays, and if you notice, the Cooper Kupp play, the big 70-yard touchdown, same exact play that Washington used on a Vernon Davis touchdown against the Minnesota Vikings in 2016. Kirk Cousins throwing the ball at that time. Same play. They isolated Barr. The backside wasn't helping to cover on the deep pass there, and touchdown. And the same thing happens here, and I believe that Kyle Shanahan also used something very similar with George Kittle on one of those big plays. So, I think that that's something that concerns you, that some of the same things are throwing off this Vikings defense, and you wonder how they're going to get shored up. But, I guess I would put it in all the categories of equal parts execution or lack thereof for the Vikings, equal parts tremendous throws by Jared Goff, because if you don't have those throws, you're not ending up with the type of production they had.
Help me out here. Anthony Barr. We have talked about, and I think basically since you arrived in the Twin Cities, talked about the fact that he's not very good in pass coverage. And we've always talked about if you put him in a position collar to pass rush, he can be pretty productive. How is it that we still see him get stuck in coverage so much? Because it's just obvious that if there's going to be a weakness for him, that's it. And yet we, during training camp, talked about, I think he's going to put a hand down more this year. I think he's going to rush. And yet we seem to be back to where we were a year ago when we were talking about the liability he presents when he is asked to cover receivers.
Yeah, that's right. We haven't seen him really rush the passer very often. And I noticed that when he has, he's gotten some pressures on the quarterback that Pro Football Focus had him coming into this game with 5 pressures, no sacks, but 5 pressures on the quarterback in only 26 rushes. So he had some success in doing it, but he's just done it so very rarely. And I wonder if a lot of that is just game plan. But, with Everson Griffin out, this would be the time to try something else. I wondered if they would blitz more. They did not blitz more tonight from what I saw. I mean, I'll have to go back and check, but it did not look like they were sending blitzes from all areas or doing anything else that it would be different from what Mike Zimmer has done for years. And I think that that's part of it, is that teams now know how Zimmer is going to handle these things. And one of the things he's been great at for his career is making adaptations. And so far, I'm not sure that we've really seen that. And that opponents are looking at Anthony Barr as a guy that they could take advantage of. He's in a tough spot. He's 6'5", trying to cover wide receivers as a linebacker. And that's the thing. Tonight, I think he's probably on Twitter getting completely roasted by fans who want him traded and things like that. But I would say that no game plan on earth would ever put him against Cooper Kupp, or would ever put him alone with Robert Woods. No freaking way. So I think that this loss of Terrence Newman has been massive. I think Terrence Newman was a coach on the field. I think he was a phenomenal communicator. I think that he saw things out there that other players didn't see and was able to coach on the field and convey Zimmer's message to the defense. And now the drop-off from someone like that to Mackenzie Alexander and Holton Hill had to play tonight, and that guy's nowhere near ready to play in the NFL.
Yep.
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. When you lose Trey Waynes fairly early in the game, and I know that he wasn't great early, but, I mean, you go from him to then Xavier Rhodes gets a cramp. So, I mean, that was a major factor in this, too, that, you see way more miscommunications, way more struggles, and the nickel spot that was held down by Captain Munnerlyn at one point and Terrence Newman, we saw it again abused today. This is the 3rd straight week that we're talking about it.
That position's a mess. Right now, that position, Matthew Coller, is a mess. And for the most part, in the last couple of years, if Mike Zimmer's had a problem in the secondary, he's a good enough coach to fix it. He can't fix this. I think Hughes might be fine someday, but he's too young now. And flat out, I think you can make the assessment tonight and be very confident Mackenzie Alexander can't play inside in the nickel.
Yeah, no, I agree. And with Mike Hughes, he ain't never seen anything like this. Nope. I mean, whatever college offenses he saw playing outside corner at University of Central Florida ain't even close to Sean McVay's NFL offense with a number 1 pick quarterback and 3 of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I mean, and Todd Gurley, not to mention. I mean, Todd Gurley was fantastic tonight, even though he didn't have big play after big play. I mean, he was a major part of their game plan, and when they needed him to pick off some yards, they did. I mean, they do clever things that you just are marveling at. I mean, they run these fake jet sweeps where somebody has to cover that backside in case it's a jet sweep, and that gives Todd Gurley a little bit of extra room. They run all the bunch formations that we've talked about on the podcast here, where they've got different releases going in different directions, and the defense has to communicate constantly. And you know what? With Terrence Newman out there, with Captain Munnerlyn out there, veteran players have proven themselves to be very good. That's a lot easier, I think, than it is for a rookie to have to know all those things at a PhD level in order to stay with a Sean McVay defense or offense. And you know, the other part of it, too, is just from a physical standpoint, I mean, they got beat even just one-on-ones. They didn't have great games up front, and I did not see Sheldon Richardson in the backfield. I did not see Danielle Hunter in the backfield aside from one sack. I thought Andrew Whitworth handled him. And missing Everson Griffin, I don't think you can understate what he means to this defense. Because remember last year, he missed one game against Washington, and they got smoked by Washington's offense a number of times in that game and did not create pressure. So even though nobody wants to talk about that after the game, and we got a whole lot of, we just need to fix it, yeah. But if we're being real, you lose a top 5, top 10 player at the position and a heart and soul type guy, that's going to be huge for your defense, and there's no way to replace him.
My mom has a permanently stuck in the 80s thing. We're talking teased up feathered hair, acid wash denim jacket, and shoulder pads. So many shoulder pads. But I just got a new phone from AT&T, and check this out. I got a second phone to gift my mom. So now she can finally ditch her old one for a phone that can actually stream all the 80s shows she loves.
Come into an AT&T store and find out how to get a smartphone on us. AT&T, more for your thing. That's our thing. See store for details.
I feel like tonight was also a game, Coller, where you need your veterans to be calm and steadying influences. So what is Xavier Rhodes doing, getting a penalty, which was, by the way, a penalty? He held the guy, and then kicking the flag. And instead of getting a 5-yard automatic first down for the Rams, it's a 15-yard penalty. That's the exact type of thing that he can't be doing.
Yeah. And
that bothered me.
This is something that we've seen on occasion from the Vikings, and not all the time. It's not like people would talk about with Rex Ryan teams where they would kind of be out of control and wouldn't be that disciplined. But on occasion, we will see the stupid penalty and things like that in the very worst moment, even from people that we don't necessarily expect it from. And, Xavier Rhodes, I remember him last year. He's an emotional guy. And last year against Drew Brees in the divisional game where, Andrew Sendejo gets hurt, and he felt it was an illegal play, and then Drew Brees threw right at him, right? And that penalty forced Mike Zimmer to pull him off the field, and then, of course, if you're Jared Goff and Sean McVay, you're going to see that on the other side of the field, what's going on, that Xavier isn't right, and that Holton Hill is in the game, which, I mean, the guy's got plenty of potential, but he can't be playing.
No.
It was never part of the plan. So, little things like that. Yeah, tell me if I'm wrong here, Judd. When you go back to even training camp, we were saying to each other, this feels a little weird. Mm-hmm. Like this team, we had Mike Zimmer refuting rumors of a trade that didn't exist. We had Zimmer throwing players out of practice. We had an offensive line coach die.
Yep.
I mean, there has been a lot of things that have happened along the road even to get here that, maybe it's a little bit of hindsight, but I think we saw it coming that this season was going to provide more stress than last year by a mile, and we have really seen that so far. And if they're going to get back in it, I mean, it's going to take a hell of an effort because, Anthony Barr was comparing this to last year when they went 2-2 to start the year and faced some adversity with Sam Bradford going down. But I don't feel that way. I felt like when they were 2-2 last year that at very least the defense had been fantastic, and we just didn't know if Case Keenum was going to give them enough points. It doesn't feel that way at all. The one thing that they've really held their hat on for the years that Mike Zimmer has been here has been that defense. And to have that crumble, I think shakes everybody to the core. I
agree. And the thing, too, is keep in mind, you start 5-0 in 2016 and collapse. 2017 began with low expectations, and then Bradford got hurt, and the expectations were, well, let's see now. That's the difference here, and I'm always curious because Zimmer teams have not thrived when expectations are high. And expectations were high. But this is also why, Coller, that we talked about, don't do anything dumb during your moves in free agency and the draft, because you know that in a year like this, adversity is going to exist, right? So Don't put yourself, don't add to that. Don't draft a kicker. Don't take a project tackle when it should be a guard, because things are going to go wrong, and I get that, and some of those things are completely out of your control. But what baffles me is when you look back in retrospect and you've added to the pressure and the stress by making questionable moves that were first guessed by people like us.
Yeah. No, I mean, and we've kind of gone back to that a number of times. Just that, it always had a kind of a weird feeling to it, even with the draft, of overthinking it a little bit and not taking who we thought they were going to take. And now and really not adding a whole lot of depth. They lose Terrence Newman. They don't really bring in anyone else. Apparently they're not going to use George Iloka ever.
Yeah. What's up with that?
I don't know, but let me switch it up a little bit on you, Judd, and something I was thinking about here, because we just got done talking with Kirk Cousins, that it reminded me very much tonight of 2016 when Sam Bradford had the ball in his hands, needing to drive to tie a game or win a game, and it just never came. Mm-hmm. And we did see Kirk Cousins do that against the Packers, but tonight he came up short with another fumble after fumbling was a big conversation last week, and I felt he fumbled away the game against Buffalo and gave his team no shot at beating the Bills when he had 2 fumbles, and he did it again. What was very interesting is that at the end of the game, when we went to talk with him, there was no accountability on himself whatsoever when it came to that fumble. It was very much, what do you want me to say? I mean, I reached my arm back and someone took the ball out. It was, things are out of my control, which means he's blaming Riley Reef, who, by the way, I thought was a freaking warrior tonight. I mean, if you want to know why they like Riley Reef, why I'm always impressed with Riley Reef, the guy got smoked last week, came back on a bum foot and just battled his butt off and gave a lot of chances for Kirk Cousins to throw the ball. And then when Kirk Cousins does get strip sacked, guess what? He's not taking responsibility for that. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was really interesting. He even made a comment that was very surprising to me, where he talked about Thielen's 45-yard touchdown and said, I wish we had gone back to that play a few more times, and kind of rolled his eyes a little. And I just thought, man, you just threw for 400 yards and put up 31 points, and you still got a little jab mixed in there. But it was really interesting to me that he was not willing to say, yeah, you know what, I've got a problem with these fumbles, and it's happened my whole career, and if I don't figure it out, I'm going to cost my team games. And I thought that will be under the radar. It won't be talked about a whole lot because the focus will be so much on the defense. But at the end of the day, they had a chance to go tie this game, and it didn't happen because of a fumble. And that's just it. It's happened too many times to him in his career where he's put up big numbers, and you've seen losses and things like that in situations where he fumbles the ball. And that's, we talked about it all offseason, the number of fumbles he had in Washington. So I did come away with wondering if some of the teams, will see those comments and kind of wonder about whether he's going to take responsibility when there are losses like this. But overall, now just to kind of point out, the guy had an amazing night, and he gave them every chance to win. He bounced back. It was exactly what you wanted to see from him, and it just wasn't able to finish the job. But he made throws. He took some hits. He was under pressure at some times and dealt with it pretty well tonight, maybe when he didn't before, and he was really slinging it. It was just the end of the game, not able to get the job done.
As a starter now, Kirk Cousins, 35 fumbles, 14 lost. That is not acceptable. And I don't care what the excuse is, that is still not acceptable.
Yeah, it's a lot. And to be at the very top of the league. And also, what's really interesting about that, too, is that he's only ever played in offenses that protect the quarterback from that. So when you look on those lists, who you'll see is like Jameis Winston and Carson Palmer, guys who had like 7-step drop offenses. Remember we talked about this with like Norv Turner and then the Vikings would just shred offenses like that because of their great defensive line and pressure. Well, Kirk Cousins has always had an offense that has a lot of play action, bootleg, rollouts, things like that. And that's where, you just wonder if it's an issue that can be resolved or if he's ever going to be able to sense that outside pressure. And we saw tonight, there were some really great moments for the offensive line. There were others where Ndamukong Suh just abused Rashad Hill and was able to sack Kirk Cousins that you're going to see throughout the year when they play good players, and that's going to happen next week when they play Philadelphia. So he's going to have to find a way to shore that up somehow, and I know the way he's not going to be able to do it is by not admitting that it's his fault.
Poor Tom.
It happens to quarterbacks. It does. But, some of it is his fault, the fact that he's fumbled 3 times these last 2 weeks and they've been costly.
Poor Tom Compton, too. He tried hard, but when Aaron Donald decides he's going to beat you in the fourth quarter and your name is Tom Compton had as good a chance as Judd Zulgad of stopping Aaron Donald a couple times there.
I got a crazy stat for you. Last year, Aaron Donald had 102 pressures on quarterbacks, okay? Everson Griffin's career high is 78. So think about that.
Wow.
Like a guy who creates more than 20 more pressures than Everson Griffin's career high. That's how dominant he is. And I agree with you, man. I think that this offensive line performance was actually really good. I mean, considering what could have happened here tonight, and I know he took a few sacks, the strip sack at the end, but in terms of how they handled overall, Aaron Donald and Ndamukong Suh and giving Cousins a lot of time to throw the ball and let things develop down the field, I mean, I thought they actually did really well. And Pat Elflein had an awesome game. I don't know what it's going to look like on tape, and I'm going to have to go through what Pro Football Focus says to really get a full picture. But I thought that he played extremely well with handling the interior pressure and also getting out on a few different plays. They threw a screen pass to Stephon Diggs where Pat Elflein is 20 yards down the field, and that's what you're used to seeing. So if you're trying to take some silver lining out of this, which is very hard to do when you lose a game on national TV like this and you get smoked on defense, it's that Pat Elflein coming back is huge, and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen, when they have this quarterback, they're putting up the type of numbers that we thought that they could. And they were already incredibly good with Case Keenum. But now they're taking that to even a crazier level with the offense that they have now. So we might see a complete shift of how this team has to win games when they've got to play Seattle and Russell Wilson, or when they've got to play Tom Brady later in the season, or Drew Brees. We might see a shift of, instead of you're trying to just get enough out of the quarterback, now all of a sudden your quarterback has to throw for 400 yards every week. That's a lot of pressure, but that might be the way they have to do it.
Can they do that, though? I mean, this team was built. This team signed Cousins to come in and be the best quarterback possible for an offense that we know was good, but nonetheless, the calling card of this team, or so we thought, was the defense. Can they flip the script that much and be successful? Because I find it very hard to believe that they're going to now say, okay, let's get in shootouts and actually win games. I could see losing a bunch of games 38-32 or something like that, but it seems like a long shot to me that you would have the ability in season to have the script go completely haywire and still be a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is you're going to have a very, very tough time turning this defense around entirely, especially if Everson Griffin isn't coming back anytime soon. And Griffin put out a statement on Instagram that was very vague about a timeline. He didn't provide one at all, so it's hard to say when he's going to come back. And, Stephen Weatherly's out there trying his best, Sean Bauer too. Those guys are backup NFL players. I mean, they're not guys that are going to come in and truck NFL left tackles. And you know what? I mean, Danielle Hunter, I don't know if he can beat the best left tackles in the NFL yet. I mean, he's been a beast. He's got 4 sacks in 4 games. But as far as consistently creating pressure, he did not do that. And, of course, another guy who doesn't put any blame on his shoulders. I wonder if that will change as we go along here, because it was interesting that he said, well, they had a lot of play actions and bootlegs. It's like, they needed somebody to really step up and have a game. And I don't ever look at it as sacks. I look at it as pressures. And when somebody dominates, they can get, as you saw last week, a half dozen pressures or more in a game will really throw off the opposing quarterback. They were completely unable to do that with Goff. Danielle Hunter's a big part of that, and another guy who just didn't have anything to say about it after the game, which is, I guess it's his prerogative, but I wonder how that will eventually play in the locker room if nobody wants to take responsibility for these things and say, hey, yeah, we didn't do enough up front, right? So I guess we'll have to see how they handle a little more adversity, too, than they've ever handled under Mike Zimmer, really. Since 2015, they've been top 5 defense in the league, and that's just been how it is. And now they're really going to have to deal with that. But to your question, no, I don't think that they can win with shootouts. Did Washington win with Kirk Cousins with shootouts? Nope.
I agree with you.
And you're looking at, if they've got to play this way, you're looking at going 7-8-1 again.
Yes. I think it's safe to say four games in offensively, Matthew Coller, this team cannot run. Watching this run game try and develop has become painful.
Yeah, and I also think that the situations that they put themselves in have not lent themselves to any running game. I mean, what the running game, like rushing attempts, will usually tell you is how often you're leading, right? And when you're down 17 to Buffalo, when you get down here by a touchdown or two to the Rams, you just really can't run the ball a whole heck of a lot. And Dalvin Cook was clearly still dinged up because he wasn't on the field very much in the second half of the game, and we saw Rock Thomas and we saw Mike Boone and a lot of Latavius Murray. And, Latavius Murray is a decent enough player, but he's not anywhere near dominant like Dalvin Cook can be. But I think that what we've seen is that the offensive line can block a little bit better with Pat Elflein in there. I think, especially on the outside running, the inside running wasn't going to happen this week. It's not going to happen next week either against Fletcher Cox. So we'll see if it develops along the way. But, I mean, you're going to need to get up in games if you want to actually run the ball. And you're going to have, last year they ran the ball a ton when they were up 10 points or something, and then they're just killing clock and having Latavius Murray close the game. But, we also haven't seen any explosive runs. And when they've tried to run, there hasn't been, like we saw a handful of times last year, 20-yard runs. And those will have to happen in order to control the clock and not get in shootouts. But you can't do that when you're down that quick.
My mom has a permanently stuck in the 80s thing. We're talking teased up feathered hair, acid wash denim jacket, and shoulder pads. So many shoulder pads. But I just got a new phone from AT&T, and check this out. I got a second phone to gift my mom. So now she can finally ditch her old one for a phone that can actually stream all the 80s shows she loves.
Come into an AT&T store and find out how to get a smartphone on us. AT&T, more for your thing. That's our thing. See store for details.
What's your sense of, to go back to something you brought up at the start of this podcast, what's your sense of how flustered the head coach is about this defense too now? Because he's got, this is the first time in a long time where he's got opposing offenses basically doing things at will. And I could see if it was one bad game caller, but now we're in a stretch of the same things are being exploited, it seems like, on a weekly basis. Do you think he's got a handle on this to a certain degree, or is he just flummoxed to the point where he is trying to tell you guys he's confident, but he's clearly not?
No, he wasn't even telling us he was confident tonight. After the game, he said, our defense is a big problem, and I've been worried about it, and I'm really worried about it now. And to hear him be that honest, as he always is, kind of gives you a look into the head of the head coach after this game, that he had the same shell-shocked look. He was really interesting after the game because he was not rude after the game. He wasn't mad at us after the game, which sometimes happens, and that's okay, but that's just his reaction. And sometimes he wants to argue that everything was better than you thought it was, and he truly thinks that because he's always telling us the truth for the most part. And this game, it was reminiscent of what happened after Philadelphia, where he legitimately looked shell-shocked that he couldn't believe what he just saw, that he couldn't believe that the Eagles just smoked them the way they did and put up 38, and it looked the same here. We asked them questions, what happened on this play, what happened on that play, and it was, short explanations, but I'm not certain that he was really sure how this got to be so bad here tonight. And you do have to give credit to the best offense in the NFL. I have never seen an offense so complicated, so much misdirection, so much bootleg.
It looks like basketball, Matthew.
It's incredible.
It looks like a basketball team.
Yeah. And you know what? The fact that they could communicate, too. I think last year they struggled to communicate at the line of scrimmage because of U.S. Bank Stadium.
Sure.
And you know what? You go back 4 road games now. We've got a loss to the Eagles, or a loss even to Carolina on the road.
Yep.
Right? A loss to the Eagles on the road.
Yep.
On grass, no less. A tie at Lambeau Field on grass, on the road, and now a loss here, and the defense hasn't played really well in any of those games. And I think a big part of it is that if offensive lines and quarterbacks can communicate and look at this Vikings defense, they can make enough changes on plays where they can protect themselves and find open wide receivers. I think that that's a part of what has happened here, is that teams have figured out different ways to communicate, and now it's going to be on Mike Zimmer. Maybe he's got to simplify some things, or maybe he's got to go to a defense that has all sorts of complex blitzes. I mean, maybe he's going to have to sell out a little bit from what he usually does, but there has to be some changes after this. As much as you got to give 100% credit to Sean McVay for being every bit the genius boy that they thought he was when they hired him. He is that, that's for sure. And so, you have to give him that credit, but also at the same time, if he scored 24 points on you, you'd say, okay, pat him on the back.
Right.
He did that. You put 38 points up, and part of it was you.
And you know what? The thing was that surprised me in the fourth quarter when they finally switched to the 3 safety package, which is fine, and we actually saw quite a bit of that in week 1, and it was Curse. And so you had Harrison Smith, Sendejo, and Curse. And so I think the 3 safety package is actually not a bad idea, but that goes back to the question of why the hell did you sign poor George Iloka, who must be standing on the sideline saying, Mike, if you weren't going to play me, you should have told me. I would have signed with Seattle or somewhere else.
Yeah, he's getting Tremaine Brock here.
He is, yes.
They didn't need Tremaine Brock last year, though. They might need George Iloka here. And, I'm really going to have to go back and look at this one. I'm going to be fascinated to do it. I mean, the fact that we'll get the tape a little bit early this week, Judd, that excites me inside. But
I'm so glad.
I'm going to spend Saturday, I think, if the tape is out early enough, really digging into this one and how they created some of the miscommunications,
yep,
mismatches, and things like that, because it's going to be fascinating to look at. But with Iloka, I thought that if they put Iloka in as a deep safety, that they could use Harrison Smith more at the line of scrimmage and wreak some havoc there. But maybe, George Iloka got cut by another competing team. Maybe George Iloka isn't as good as he was in the past, or maybe he's a really smart guy. So I'm certain that he's catching up. It's just maybe it's too much in too short of a period of time, and we'll see him in the second half of the season. I don't know.
Harrison Smith on Cooper Kupp is a better matchup than attempting to put poor Mackenzie Alexander on Cooper Kupp.
Well, and that's a thing that you have to keep coming back to with this, is that their belief in Mackenzie Alexander is going to ultimately cost them a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It cost them last year in the playoffs when he was matched up with Willie Snead on a big 4th down play, and luckily they got away with that one because of the Minneapolis Miracle. It cost them against the Detroit Lions in 2016 when the Lions abused him. It cost them in Washington in 2016 when Kirk Cousins threw against him a number of times. This I don't know of one game where he's been good aside from against Brett Hundley in the game last year at Lambeau Field, and that's not a whole lot to really speak about. So we're getting to the point where they might not know what to do there. If you can't play Hughes because he's in over his head as a rookie, and the other guy that you have there is a total liability, this is the thing about how much they're going to be able to clean up their defense. It's just hard to believe they're going to ever go back from here this season to being that number 1 defense. It's now, can you solve it enough to score 30 points and win?
Right. Last thing, sir, do you sense that players are mad/defiant now or perplexed?
Perplexed. I'll definitely select perplexed.
That's not good, Matthew.
No.
Never good.
You know what? Because you know what? I think that what you see from them, and I heard this before in 2016, and they were justified because the defense was so good, that they were like, guys, we're actually a good team, and you shouldn't be in our locker room asking us why we're not good.
Yep.
It's the kid. It was Blair Walsh's fault. It was some weird bounces. It was Jake Long shows up and gets injured. And I agree with them. I think that 2016 team was actually fantastic, but they got a lot of bad breaks that year, and I totally understood why they had that attitude. This time, talking to Anthony Barr wouldn't even look at anybody when he's answering questions. Daniil Hunter had no answers whatsoever. Mike Zimmer doesn't look like he has answers right now. So, if they're going to clean it up, they're going to have to do it pretty darn fast. And the one the one break that they have here, Judd, is that they're going to Philadelphia, but they've got a few extra days to prepare for it, and they also are going against Carson Wentz, trying to get himself back to 100% after that severe knee injury. And if you've ever seen any quarterback come back from that, it's not the snap of the fingers. I mean, he went through a lot. And I remember, I think Donovan McNabb had something similar in his career, and it took a long time for him to come back. Once he did, he was really good again. But, you know, as Wentz is still sort of feeling his way back on that knee, that might be the only advantage they have going up against the Eagles. So now, I mean, I think the season comes down to this Eagles game, Judd. Don't you? I mean, don't you feel like
it's enormous?
This is it.
Well, you know what? You know what? When they lost the Buffalo game, that changed the complexion of these first 5 games, because we knew that these first 5 were tough. And when they lost that game, that changed everything. So, yes, I'm with you. If you lose in Philadelphia now, you have – and here's the other problem. Your team's not playing like it's supposed to play. So if you go into Philadelphia and give up 38 points, it's a problem with personnel. It's a problem with scheme. It's a problem with record. It is a widespread problem.
Yep, and we're going to have to see here what type of leadership exists from Mike Zimmer and Kirk Cousins, because I'll tell you what, didn't see a whole heck of a lot after the game from Kirk Cousins in this adversity that he has faced here of, you know, a really bad game against Buffalo. And again, just don't think I'm hating, because he was fantastic tonight for 98% of the game, and then he gets the strip sack. But to not really put that on himself, to not have a message to the team, to not have a RELAX type of moment, and that's not to suggest that Aaron Rodgers is always perfect at this stuff either, but, you know, to not have that, it really kind of took me aback that there wasn't some sort of defiance from Cousins about, you know, we're gonna fix this and we're gonna win. It was more of, he said a couple times, there's a lot of things that are out of my control. Like, come on, man. You know, like, that's not really what you want to hear.
That might be how he thinks, though, Matthew. That might be exactly how he thinks.
Yep, you are 100% correct. And he's not wrong. And that was my article. But he and I shouldn't be seeing this the same way.
Right.
I mean, or he could see it however the hell he wants, but, like, he has to convey a message, I think, after this game, and that wasn't there. So I guess what we'll see over the next week is just how well this team can bounce back. I mean, overall, big picture, they lost by a touchdown to the Rams, which is kind of what we talked about and predicted before the game, that they would lose by a score. And so maybe they can look at it as, okay, it was a semi-bounce back, that they didn't come in here and get trucked. But at the same, and so there is still an opportunity to save this thing, especially since the NFC North is not insanely good like we kind of thought it would be. But, you know, I guess we'll have to see exactly how they bounce back, and that will tell us a lot more about them and if they're ever going to be the team that we thought. But that's looking less and less probable now.
What's the schedule for the Purple Podcast in the coming days that people can expect?
Oh, it's going to be wonderful, Judd. We're going to have offensive line, defensive line breakdown of this game and preview of the Eagles. Sage Rosenfels and I are going to get together. We've also got the football hour every day that'll be back in action live in Minneapolis. It's going to be wonderful. And then I pack my bags again, Judd, and I'll be going to Philadelphia, where I can get full beers thrown at me anytime I want.
You might be, that might be it too. All right, Coller, travel safely, and I only have one thing to say to you, and that is this: happy football.
Thanks, Judd. Happy football to you as well.
Talk to you later. All right, that's another edition of the Purple Podcast. As Matthew Coller said, plenty more to come in the coming days. Breakdowns of this game against the Rams, and Matthew, very excited to watch the film. I'm Zulgad in Minneapolis. He's Coller in Los Angeles. Talk to you all later on the Purple Podcast.
My mom has a permanently stuck in the 80s thing. We're talking teased up feathered hair, acid wash denim jacket, and shoulder pads. So many shoulder pads. But I just got a new phone from AT&T, and check this out. I got a second phone to gift to my mom. So now she can finally ditch her old one for a phone that can actually stream all the 80s shows she loves.
Come into an AT&T store and find out how to get a smartphone on us. AT&T, more for your thing. That's our thing. See store for details.
Judiciary Committee in Kavanaugh. I'm Tim McGuire with an AP News Minute. Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh tells the Senate Judiciary Committee that the sexual allegations made against him are part of a political effort to bring him down.
This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit.
3 women, including Christine Blasey Ford, accused him of sexual inappropriate behavior when he was in high school and college. Ford, in her testimony to the committee, says she is certain Kavanaugh attacked her.
The details about that night that bring me here today are the ones I will never forget. They have been seared into my memory and have haunted me episodically as an adult.
George Washington University constitutional law expert Jonathan Turley says Kavanaugh may survive.
He did regain, I think, some ground after Dr. Ford's testimony. But he has returned this to a toss-up vote.
The Judiciary Committee is to vote on his nomination tomorrow. I'm Tim McGuire.